The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Drinking and memory. So generally, it's pretty widely known that if you drink a lot to the point of what's colloquially called a blackout situation, you don't remember stuff from the time that you were drinking. But there's a group of scientists from the University of Exeter that did a study to see how do different, more reasonable amounts of alcohol consumption affect the brain. And what they did was they took 88 social drinkers and they split them up into two groups. They told them either drink as much as you want, or if you're in the non-drinking group, don't drink at all. And then they were given a very specific word learning task. They looked at the data and they determined that those who drank alcohol could remember more of what they learned than those who drank no alcohol. Celia Morgan, who was one of the researchers, said, "Our research not only showed that those who drank alcohol did better when repeating the word learning task, but that this effect was stronger among those who drank more." So it's unclear what the cause is, but generally these researchers believe that there's some connection between moderate drinking, not drinking to the point of a blackout, of course. Sure. Nobody's arguing that. You will get diminishing marginal returns on this if you keep going, and in fact, negative marginal returns. And long-term memory, although it's not really clear what the connection is yet.
Well, so of course this affects your short-term memory detrimentally. So obviously if you start drinking and you try to take in new information, obviously you're going to be less likely to remember that. But what this is good for is consolidating your short-term memory and making it into long-term memory.
And this is something that happens
that's pretty cool.
While dreaming. One of the things that happens is you take your short-term memories from, I don't exactly know, the previous day or however many hours, whatever the case may be, and that is consolidated into long-term memory. It's sort of like, actually, I know that it's kind of lame to still do computer analogies for memory-related stuff, but it's like you wake up and your RAM starts filling up the way that RAM starts filling up between reboots of a computer. And then at some point, some of the information from the RAM is cleared when you sleep and then moved, some of it, into your hard drive. Not exactly a process that happens with computers, but anyway, it's sort of an analogy that I think is relevant here. And the idea is the drinking may be dealing with the hippocampus in a similar way when it comes to the consolidation of short-term memory.
And that's why I think most people realize now that if you have a test that you need to study for, it's better to, get your studying done, but then get a good night's rest.
Right.
Rather than to stay up all night and cram the entire night, because you're not going to be able to store what you learn as you would if you were able to sleep. And, if you don't have enough time to sleep, maybe just have a drink before you go to bed.
Yeah. I have friends who have been studying for the LSAT for law school, the GMAT to get into business school, sometimes the GRE to get into other graduate programs. And it's now pretty widely accepted, like all test-taking classes, instructors, books will say, don't study up until the last minute. Study until 5 or 6 p.m. the day before. If you even feel like you still need to be studying the day before, a lot of people do, stop studying, have a meal, go to bed, and that's sort of it because of how memory works. Your retention, your usable retention of cramming up until the last minute is going to be limited. Now, my approach when I did the GMAT to get into business school, graduate school, was not to study at all. And I don't necessarily recommend that to everybody.
So you got in, it sounds like.
I did get in ultimately. Yes, I did ultimately get in.
See, I subscribed to the work hard, play hard mentality when I was in college back in the day.
Sure.
And what I would do, because I was a political science major, I didn't have to take many tests as much as I did just write essays.
Right.
And I would go to the library with a, maybe some wine or some mixed drink that I was able to conceal and say like a water bottle or a thermos.
Okay.
And I would write my essay up until the point where I was no longer capable of writing anymore.
I've not heard of that strategy before.
I don't know if it's the most effective strategy, but it was pretty fun.
And you graduated with a 4.0, right? So
3.9.
It really worked.
Maybe that 0.1.
That 0.1 would have been it. Anyway, none of this should be considered advice, by the way. These are just anecdotes. There's a tourist in Mexico who filmed himself rescuing a gigantic sea turtle, which got flipped over onto its back. And apparently it's true. If a turtle gets flipped over onto its back in certain situations, obviously if it's upside down in the water, it's going to be able to sort of right itself. But in certain situations, depending on the size of the turtle, specific species and circumstances, it cannot flip itself back over. And this was one of those huge turtles that a man found in Cozumel, Mexico, on its back by a drainage pipe, sort of close to the seashore, to the beach. Initially thought that the turtle was dead. It started blinking its eyes. So the guy filmed himself, and it shows him flipping the turtle upright and following it as it heads back to the sea. I've been super interested in these large turtles for a long time, not just the sea turtles, but all different types. But the fear, I read the Riot Act at some point about salmonella and turtles, how turtles they carry salmonella, period. If you touch a turtle, you immediately want to wash your hands, disinfect, sanitize, whatever, because otherwise you touch your nose, your eyes, whatever the case may be, you will be infected with salmonella, almost like it was fait accompli, right? Like it's okay. Going to happen. And as a result, even when I've been to Mexico, where there are these turtle reserves, and these may be completely immoral places, I didn't even look into it because I was just told, listen, touching turtles is just a recipe for disaster. You don't want to do it. Although my only pet, my dad has a dog now, but I never really had pets growing up because my mom's scared of all animals. My really only pet when I lived in Argentina was a turtle. Okay. And that turtle got into bleach. I was told it got into bleach in the laundry room on the terrace of the building we lived in Argentina, and thus the trash people took it away, and it was pretty traumatic for me. I don't know if it's really true that it got into bleach. Like how did it get into the laundry room and open up a bleach container? So, it doesn't even have thumbs. Like, it's kind of hard to believe, but it's what I was told anyway, and it was pretty devastating. But since that point, and because of the salmonella, I basically stay away from turtles.
Wow, that's pretty interesting. Yeah, if you read this article, it makes it sound as if this man was some sort of hero. But I think just about anyone would do the right thing there and just flip the turtle over. Sure. Obviously, if you know that they carry salmonella, you may be more weary about it. And also, this turtle was found near a drainage pipe, so that's not going to be the most sanitary thing.
Right.
But why don't you just use a stick? I mean, it's a big turtle. Maybe you can't just use a little twig or something.
I think you can.
There's other methods that you don't have to touch the turtle to flip him back onto his body.
Yeah. Well, fortunately, sometimes American tourists will go all over the world and just do really absurd things that call attention to them and make Americans generally be looked down upon all over the world.
Like those spring breakers in Cancun who started chanting "Build the Wall." We covered that months and months ago.
Yeah. So, I'm glad that this sort of turned out for the best and the turtle survived. But yeah, I am pro-turtle. I'm completely I'm not agnostic on turtles. I'm completely in favor of turtles.
What about Mitch McConnell, the leader of the Senate Republicans?
He's turtle-like. Yeah. And I'm not against, listen, I'm fine if people look like turtles. I'm not fine with people doing the things Mitch McConnell is trying to do in the Senate. So it's really a political disagreement I have with him.
It's like you're a shell of what you once were.
That's a good one. That is a good one. Okay, there is a solar eclipse that's going to be observable in the United States in the middle of August. I have made note of this. I actually wrote this down. I made a note of this in my calendar about a year and a half ago when I looked at what's the word I'm looking for? Astronomical events will there be during 2017, and as it turns out, I will be out of the country and I will be in the southern hemisphere, so I will be unable to witness this solar eclipse. But Pat is going to be able to witness it. We'll hear about his plans to really be in the thick of it, unless these plans have changed.
Well, they're not definite plans, but we're definitely going to be seeing the solar eclipse at the peak of where it happens, I guess you'd say, because pretty much throughout the entire country, you can see some version of it. Of course, I'm talking about the 48 contiguous states here.
Sure.
But there's a line that runs from like Portland, Oregon to Charleston, South Carolina.
Yeah, sort of diagonally
down. And we're going to be on that line. And that's
now, when
where
you say we're going to be on that line, people have no clue what you're talking about.
Oh, yeah. We're going on a road trip.
Okay.
Road trip. Going to see a bunch of national parks. We're hoping to head out west.
Right.
See Yellowstone and Badlands in South Dakota and a bunch in Colorado, including the Rocky Mountains. Maybe going to Utah, see maybe Canyonlands or Arches. It's not definite yet.
Okay.
But we wanted to go to a national park that is going to witness the solar eclipse, and Grand Teton National Park in Wyoming.
Grand Teton. Is that how I grew up saying it?
I haven't been there yet, so I don't know. Apparently, Grand Teton's going to witness the eclipse. Yellowstone's going to see about 96% of it.
That's pretty solid.
As you get closer to the line, you'll see more and more of the sun being covered, so that's pretty cool. And I guess the largest or most notable city in the U.S. to experience the full eclipse will be Nashville. So that's pretty cool too. I mean, you
Now,
have the entire city experiencing it along with you.
one question, if I may. You say you hope to head out west. Is there some circumstance where you might head out like east into the ocean or north into Canada or something like that? Or like
No.
who determines if you don't end up heading out west?
Well, I'm doing with a buddy of mine.
Yeah.
And, you know, we're limited to about 2.5 weeks, which is a long time. But if you consider driving out all that way and then you got to head back, I mean, we don't really know. And part of the spirit of a road trip is that anything's possible.
Sure.
You know, you could pick up some hitchhikers in Wyoming. I don't know, like what's a random
Anywhere,
state?
really.
Yeah, Kansas.
Right.
And head off in a totally different direction.
Yeah.
But I want to be on that line for the solar eclipse because I've never seen one.
And I remember one when I was a kid, and in 6th grade, we went outside to see it with these weird glasses. It was almost like paper 3D glasses, except they blocked most of the sunlight, so you could just kind of see the outline of the eclipse, and you could look directly at it. I think these eclipses are fascinating. Now, the one I experienced, and I don't know if I was on the 100% line in Massachusetts at the time, it didn't get nearly as dark. Like, some people imagine it's like nighttime in the middle of the day.
Okay.
It really wasn't. It was sort of like a weird dusk the entire time with like a reflection, the aurora seen around the shadow cast by the moon.
Sure.
And it was still, you could still see to the naked eye just fine. Like no street lights were even necessary. But I may not have been on the full coverage line of that particular eclipse.
It would be pretty cool though to see it as like almost nighttime or dawn or dusk when it's the middle of the day. I mean,
Yeah.
that's something that I've never experienced before.
Right.
And also there's part of the sun's atmosphere that you can see that you normally can't. I
Right.
don't know if it's because it's usually just invisible to the naked eye or because
I think what it is the light of the sun is so bright
Yeah.
next to it that you just can't tell. It's not visible enough that next to the bright sun you can tell that that's there.
yeah, and I guess that you can see part of the corona, and also
Sure.
once the moon starts moving away a little bit, there's this like diamond ring illusion. So that's pretty cool too.
NASA will be chasing the solar eclipse with 2 jet planes. That was actually the story.
Yeah, we were going to talk about that.
Yeah. And but you know what? I'm finding that way less interesting than your road trip. I actually find the road trip way more compelling.
I think we'll be talking about that a lot more. But what's cool about this NASA jet plane story is they'll
Yeah,
be
yeah,
able to
yeah.
see
Good
it for about
segue.
7 minutes. Whereas even if you're in the thick of it, right on that line that runs down the U.S., you'll see it for 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes.
Oh, it's that quick. I didn't realize.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. I mean, so just on the road trip, you could rent a car to drive out and then fly home.
Could do that. My friend has a camper van.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, okay.
I could ditch him in Colorado and fly
And
back.
just fly home yourself.
Yeah.
Let him drive home by himself. I'm liking that idea, actually.
Yeah.
That seems like a pretty good idea. Okay. So anyway, the solar eclipse, I think it'll be really interesting, and hopefully I'll be able to. I mean, with the advent of the internet, I should be able to at least get a picture of what it's like.
Maybe I'll live stream it. You know, and you
Not bad.
can look up videos of other solar eclipses.
Yeah. I'll be able to see what's going on. Okay. We'll hear more about Pat's road trip upcoming, but that's it for this bonus show.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.